So today I'm joined by a man that you will probably know from Irish television, and a man that also is famous in the world of stand-up comedy, Mr. Michael Redmond. How are you doing, Michael?
Very well, Morris. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So I suppose, Will, what have you been up to lately, I suppose, is the question I've been asking people.
No, not a lot. There is one thing, though. I've been doing a thing. There's a company called Irishify who do these video shout-outs. Have you heard of Cameo? Have you? It's kind of an American version of it. It's where they get sort of fairly well-known faces to do shout-outs. Say if somebody's a fan of Father Ted, and in particular Father Stone, and they want to send a message to a friend who's having a birthday or a wedding anniversary or even a divorce, they give me a shout-out for only €30. So that's what I've been doing basically. Yeah, that's what's been keeping me slightly busy anyway. So it's going very well. Yeah.
And whereabouts are you now at the moment?
I live in Glasgow.
You live in Glasgow.
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
And when did you move over there?
I moved to London in the late '80s, and then moved back to Dublin for a very short while, for about 6 months. And after that, I moved back to London again, and then Glasgow about 20 years ago.
And what's Glasgow like at the moment with all this going on?
It's much the same as Ireland, I think. I mean, the lockdown's fairly sort of 100%. You know, there's apart from the essential like supermarkets or newsagents, everything else is just closed up. You know, and you can't go to the doctors or dentists. So
yeah, it's kind of the same over here.
I think it's the only way they can get rid of it. I don't really. I can kind of understand it. You know, I'm not complaining.
Yeah. Before you went into comedy and acting, I was reading that you'd done a bit of writing.
Well, it was more just that's how I kind of started. It was kind of through actually Dermot Morgan and Father Ted. We were mates in Dublin long before Father Ted, and he used to submit sort of bits and pieces to Mike Murphy's. I think it was called Morning Call. It was kind of like Terry Wogan on BBC. It was kind of a playful morning show on RT Radio. And he started reading out stuff that Dermot sent him. So I kind of knew Dermot, and we were kind of doing bits and pieces on stage together. And he said, you should send some stuff in as well. So I did. It was kind of like topical gags, kind of. And he started using them, so that was kind of how I got started. But I mean, I couldn't make a living out of that, you know. It was just 15 quid for a gag or something.
Yeah.
And I get 3 weeks. So I mean, I couldn't live in it. But then a guy called Billy McGrath, who later became head of comedy in RTE for a while. He opened up a comedy club near where I lived in Mount Marion. So I started doing stand-up there. Really, that's how I kind of started. But I couldn't really make a living out of writing, you know. So that's why I basically started doing stand-up.
Yeah, and in terms of stand-up, then I done a little bit in Dublin when I was in college.
Right.
One of the guys dared me to do a few gigs,
yeah.
and I did a few gigs. I'll send one to you later on. But I found that my problem with doing it was I could write stuff, but I just couldn't remember it. Like if I was going up for 15 minutes, I'd like bring a piece of paper like this, and I'd have like maybe six or eight bullet points. But I just leave it on the ground and try not to look at it. But that's the one thing I found hard. I knew what I had, but I just couldn't remember the order and things like that.
Yeah. But I never had that problem. But I mean, I still get nervous going on stage. I don't sort of wander on blasé, but I suppose maybe I just used to rehearse it enough before when I start. That is, if I'm doing it now, I don't really, unless I've got a couple of new gags, I don't really rehearse. I might rehearse a few new gags in my head, but apart from that, I wouldn't rehearse the whole set. But when I started doing it, I would sort of rehearse it word for word quite a few times before I went on stage. Even if you did that, you still forgot.
Yeah, I just found it nerve-wracking. I was I like going to the pub and having a few drinks, but I knew that when I was doing that, I couldn't have a few pints or it would all definitely go south, you know.
I know a few comedians who've gone down that line of drinking beforehand, and the problem is that you start off with a couple of pints, and then the next gig you need 3 pints, and the next gig you need 4 pints. You know, it just doesn't work. You know?
Yeah.
And then you start thinking you're pissed on stage. You start thinking you're funny, but you're not.
Yeah.
Although I mean, heckling isn't that prominent, but I mean, if you are being heckled, if you're sober, most hecklers are had a few pints. So if you're being heckled by somebody who's a bit drunk and you're sober, you can usually deal with it, And unless you're already tonguing your arse and everybody in the audience hates you. But if you're going reasonably well and some idiot heckles you and he's a bit pissed, then you can usually, if you're sober, you can handle it,
I've seen a few clips on you that have like hundreds of thousands of hits at shows all across. Like, I think most of them are in England, are they? Where's the furthest you've done a gig?
Furthest would be probably Montreal in Canada. I think it's still going. There's a comedy festival called Just for Laughs. I think it's still going. I'm not sure, but that's probably the furthest I've been. Yeah, but I've done gigs also in Sweden and in France as well. There's an English guy used to run a club, and maybe he still does. I don't know, in Paris. It'd be mostly expats you'd get at them, But the gig I did in Sweden, it was all Swedish people, and I was terrified because I thought they wouldn't understand me. But again, a lot of them could speak English. But even the fact that they could speak English, I thought because my accent and the speed I would go at, well, not speed, but from their viewpoint, the speed I would go at, they wouldn't understand me. But it was brilliant. Yeah, they got everything. It was great.
It was a good place over there, Sweden.
Yeah, but that's the only time I've been there. I was in Stockholm, and it was on this boat. It wasn't a boat that was sailing out. It was just a boat that was moored. Some guy owned it, and he ran a few gigs. It wasn't just me. A few other comedians from London had gone over as well. But it was good fun. You just did 2 nights, I think, and it was a good laugh, But Montreal is the furthest I've been. I'm not a great. I don't really like flying very much.
Same as me.
Yeah. I used to be just absolutely petrified. I'm not petrified anymore, but I still would much prefer to go by a train or bus if I could. So I've never been to Australia. I'm not sure I could handle that.
Too far.
Yeah, 20 hours. Montreal was 5 or 6 hours. That was bearable, But,
do you do much gigs over in Scotland? Obviously, before all this, have you been still regularly doing them?
You might have heard of the Stand Comedy Club. It's quite. They have a club in Glasgow and Edinburgh and Newcastle.
Yeah.
And it's a great club. It's a really good, well-run comedy club by a guy called Tommy Shepherd. And they have a club in Glasgow. So I was the regular comper for their Sunday nights. It was called Michael Redmond's Sunday Service. So I used to do there nearly every Sunday night. And then I would do other gigs around Scotland as well. But that was my kind of bread and butter gig,
Is Sunday Service a play-in on Father Stone?
Well, yeah, it was Tommy Shepherd, the owner of the Stand. He thought of the name of it, but yeah, it is kind of basically a play on Father Stone, I think. Yeah.
Do many people in Scotland recognise you from that?
Oh yeah, it's quite popular in Scotland, particularly Glasgow, because Glasgow is very kind of a lot of people have Irish ancestry in Glasgow. A lot of people from Donegal for some reason, I don't know why. So it's it's very big, particularly in Glasgow. But in Scotland overall, it's quite it's very popular. Maybe not as much as Ireland, but certainly more so than England, I think. So yeah, there's a pretty big, well, sort of Catholic population in Scotland as well as, so they kind of get it,
And how did you end up getting into Father Ted?
Well, I was in London at the time, and I was doing a gig in the Bloomsbury Theatre. I think it was some kind of an Irish night, because I remember Dylan Moran and also Ardal O'Hanlon were also on the bill. I can't remember who else was on. But I remember afterwards these 2 guys come up to me and said they'd written a show about these 3 priests on an island off the west coast of Ireland, and they thought they might have a part for me. And I kind of didn't think much of it, because I just thought, could be crap, could be good, or I might never hear of it again, I don't know. So I just said, yeah, that's grand. So I think about 6 months later, I got a call, and it was kind of an audition, but it wasn't really. I think they kind of already had me in mind because they'd seen my stand-up act. Because when in my stand-up act in those days, I was very sort of laid back. I used to just do a one-liner and then pause and just stare at the audience. And so I think they kind of saw that I might be fairly suitable for Father Stone. So
the deadpan style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they kind of had me in mind. I think because I think they wrote a lot of the parts was for kind of comedians they liked, I think, and had seen. Like Graham Norton and a few others as well, Tommy Tiernan probably as well. So they kind of, and Joe Rooney and Pat McDonnell, we all came from the same sort of a stand-up stable rather than an acting background, Because I don't really see myself as an actor. It was just that part kind of suited me. I can act within a certain framework.
Do you feel that Father Ted the likes of Joe Rooney and guys that you've mentioned, like that were gigging beforehand, do you really think that really helps you and other guys excel in their careers?
Well, I think it kind of we were able to kind of do, because they didn't write the part for actors really, well, our parts anyway. I mean, the other parts were obviously, but they kind of wrote our parts because they saw our stand-up act. So we didn't really have to act. We kind of, in a way, were doing our stand-up kind of persona really. So it was, I think that made it a lot easier, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you feel more relaxed in it, you know. And also, I mean, I felt quite relaxed because I also knew Dermot, and I knew Ardle as well from the stand-up circuit. So it was quite. And I'd also known Jeffrey Perkins, the producer, because he produced a couple of the stand-up shows I'd been on Channel 4, like Friday Night Live and another one. So I kind of knew all the people as well, so it was quite relaxing. I wasn't kind of like going into this strange world that I didn't know anything about you.
Yeah.
So it was quite good fun.
And what was the...
Nobody knew then, because this was the first series, it hadn't been on television, so nobody had any idea then of, you know, whether it was going to be a success or not. Because you don't know, even though you think when you do something that it's funny, you don't know until it's actually shown on television whether it's going to be any good or not, you know. So nobody had any idea then of what it was going to be like. So it was all very relaxed, you know.
And what was it like recording? Was it fun or was it serious?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I only remember it being fun. Yeah, I don't remember any. I mean, obviously you couldn't mess about too much, you know. I mean, because film costs money, you know. You can't start mucking around. But I just remember it being quite relaxed. Yeah, I don't remember any kind of tension or anything. No.
Yeah.
Maybe as the series went along, as it got more success, maybe there was. I don't know, but certainly when I did it, it was all quite relaxed, you know. And
what was Dermot like as a person, from your point of view?
It was glad. I mean, I say we were mates long before Father Ted, and I got on really well with him, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of the sense of humour. What a lot of people don't know about Dermot is that they do in Ireland, but in Britain they don't realise what an amazing impersonator he was, you know. He wasn't. He had a lot more to his. A lot more strings to his bow. That's the expression. String to your bow. Is that one? I've got that one mixed up.
There's a lot of clips of him online as well doing his stand-up stuff, and it's very funny.
Yeah. He's a brilliant, amazing impersonator. I mean, if you closed your eyes, if you're in the room with him, he was doing something, you closed your eyes, you swear that person was there, you know.
So you've done a bit of time, Michael, with radio work as well, and one of those was controversial. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, it was a show called Eamon, Older Brother of Jesus, which I wrote. It was I'll describe what it was like. It was basically it was a sitcom. It was built around the fact that the so-called Holy Family had another son called Eamon, who was Jesus' older brother. It was kind of sort of a typical Catholic family. Kind of Jesus was the favourite because he was the Messiah, but the older brother was just sort of regarded as an Egypt and just left out because his younger brother was the Messiah. That was basically it. It was kind of like a sibling rivalry, really. But I mean, there was some kind of biblical sort of jokes, all right, but it was more based on the fact that some poor bastard his younger brother was the Messiah. That was basically the joke, the sort of the thrust of the whole thing, you know. So I wrote about 6 series and I got paid for them and we recorded them all. But it'd been commissioned by a guy called Jonathan James Moore, who was who'd been the head of Radio 4 at the time. But in the meantime, he'd left and been replaced with this Scottish Catholic. And he was this guy was looking through the Radio Times one morning. He saw Eamon, Older Brother of Jesus advertised as being broadcast 2 nights ahead or something. So he asked for the tapes. It was tapes then, that's how far back it was.
Yeah.
And he wasn't amused. He thought what I didn't realise, I didn't even think that Catholics would think if Jesus had an older brother, therefore she wasn't a virgin at all. To me, it's a lot of shite. But I mean, if you believe that sort of thing, I suppose maybe you'd be offended. I don't know.
And was that in the 90s?
This would have been 95 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone was still that little bit holier then than compared to now, maybe.
I think I wouldn't have thought that most people in the BBC was. It just happened to be this Scottish Catholic guy who was appointed the commissioner. He was offended by the whole thing. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, it was a classic sitcom rather than. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're back again.
Yeah.
It was just when you finished recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the idea wasn't to sort of lampoon biblical stories, because it would have got a bit boring after a while if that was it. It was more just kind of a family sitcom, really, based in biblical times.
Yeah.
But,
blown out proportion, was it?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It was kind of like the mother was your typical Irish mother, proud of her Messiah son, and the father was just kind of lived in a world of his own, and the brother was just the Egypt because he wasn't the Messiah. He was left to run the carpenter shop. So that was basically the theme of it, but he wasn't having it because of the religious side of it. So I think they put out bits of it on. Alan Davis had a radio show on Radio 1 at the time, and they put out bits of it on that, but it never got a full sort of exposure on Radio 4, which it was meant to. So
Where's the tapes? Where's the tapes now?
I probably have them here somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've moved back quite a few times in the meantime. So,
yeah. Maybe sure you should put them out.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where you could put tapes. Would tapes work anywhere?
You could convert them. Yeah, if you knew the right people, you convert them. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, I'll have a search around all some of my things. I'm sure they must be around somewhere. Yeah.
Another thing I seen online was the Joe Pasquale apparently nicked one of your jokes. Is that true?
Well, yeah, it was Stuart Lee was the one who sort of exposed it. He was on what's the thing where it's not the Palladium where they do in front of the royal family, royal variety or something.
Yeah.
He did my joke about when I say, people often say to me, "Hey, you, what are you doing in my garden?" It was kind of like, I used to wear a Mac and I would just sort of pause and say, I used to carry a sort of a plastic bag or something. And that was a joke. People often say to me, what are you doing in my garden? But he said it in the Royal Variety thing, and Stuart Lee exposed him for it. And Stuart Lee did about a half an hour routine about just sort of how ridiculous it all was. Joe Pasquale saying, "What are you doing in my garden?" Because if he was in somebody's garden, people would just say, "What's Joe Pasquale doing in my garden?" It's supposed to be this strange character who appears in your garden. But the other thing about that is that he claimed it was just a coincidence. But it was about 2 years later, I was watching some chat show on, I think it was ITV or something. And Des O'Connor was interviewing this 15-year-old kid. Like, it was kind of in the middle of the interview when I turned it on, so I didn't know what was going on. But it became clear the guy wanted to be a comedian. So Des O'Connor asked him to tell him one of his jokes, and he told one of my jokes. And it turned out he is Joe Pasquale's son.
Oh, Jesus. Runs in the family.
Runs in the family. They always have my jokes up on their kitchen board,
In terms of what you're doing now, then, you're working with the Irish company, Irish FI, isn't that it?
IRISHFI, so IRISHIFY, yeah. If you want to get a video done, just go to irishfi.com. And I can do a shout out if you have a friend who likes Father Stone. It's not just me, but there's others. Joe Rooney and Pat McDermott are on it as well.
Yeah, there's loads of famous kind of Irish-based actors on it as well.
Other famous Irish people on it, yeah, and a few other Irish comedians as well, yeah. So I think there's about 10 or 15 people who do it, yeah. So if you know a friend who's a fan of Father Stone and would like a shout out from Father Stone, go to irishfi.com and they'll sort it out, yeah.
In terms of the future for yourself, I know it's kind of uncertain at the moment, but when all this passes, and please God, hopefully it'll pass soon, what's the plans for yourself?
Well, I'm going to carry on doing stand-up. I'll still do if the stand ever comes back, if the live performance ever comes back, I'll do the comparing of the stand in Glasgow and do gigs around. Also, as I say, I'm involved with the other radio show you mentioned, Fags, Mags and Bags. That's on Radio 4, so hopefully we'll be recording a new series of that soon once this COVID thing. I don't think you could do it on Zoom. I think it'd be too awkward.
Yeah.
You kind of need everybody in the same room, I think, Yeah,
you need that professional audio, I think, as well. Like even Zoom. Zoom has its flaws as well. That's why I'm kind of using Skype at the moment. Yeah,
I don't think you could do it for a Radio 4 recording. So hopefully, so we'll be doing that as well. Hopefully, once this is all done, and then anything else that comes up, really,
Yeah.
But stand-up is my bread and butter, So.
And when was the last time you gigged over in Ireland?
In Ireland, God, that's a good question. I can't remember. It might have been 2 or 3 years ago. I think I was doing the warm-up for the Edinburgh Festival. There's a theatre in town, it's called.
Yeah.
I think a few other students have done gigs there. I can't remember. It's down by the Liffey somewhere. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, is it the Vodafone Comedy Festival? Is it one of them?
Oh, no, it wasn't. It wasn't a comedy festival. It was just a theatre that I hired for a few nights to.
Okay.
Do. It was about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as I remember, that's the last time I gigged in Ireland or Dublin. Yeah.
Well, sure. We'll hopefully see you back here soon. Anyway.
Hope so. Yeah, once all this crap is finished. Yeah.
And it was a pleasure to chat to you. I know you're a man with very good patience after tonight.
No problem, Morris. Okay. hope your voice sleeps after tonight.
Yeah. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a million, Michael, for that.
No problem. Take care of yourself. All the best.
Good night. Thanks.
If you enjoy the content on our channel, we'd appreciate a subscription. Thank you.